everybody, and welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode here of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 10, the finale. Michael, what a finale we got in this one. Madness all around, craziness all around. We got so much to get into. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies. You are
Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies, and we are the
Geek
Buddies! Hey, 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 hey!
Hey! It's a Saturday morning as we're recording this, and we are very excited to jump in and talk about this finale. What a finale for Season 2. Mike, we've been talking about it every week. What a joy it's been to review these things with you, both Star Trek Season 3 and this. And it's just been banger upon banger upon banger every week with these two seasons back to back. It's been fantastic, Mike. So, so much happened in this one. Hegemony, am I right? I've never said that word before in my life, so I hope I'm saying
Hegemony.
It right. Hegemony, that's it. Hegemony. Like Hermione, but hegemony. All right, fine. Sure. Hegemony. What a fantastic Season 2 finale episode. We got the Gorn back in all their alien xenomorph glory. We got some more with Nurse Chapel and Spock. Maybe some ideas that it could be more here. As I predicted, Captain Batel, possibly in danger of losing her life here with Pike there. And we get the introduction of Lieutenant Scotty. That's right. Montgomery Scott is officially in this canon of the Strange New Worlds. So much got jumped, and then boom at the end, Michael, a to be continued to get us excited. Shades of the menagerie from the original series, shades of the best of both worlds in the Star Trek Next Generation. So, your thoughts overall as you have had now a couple of days to really savor and process this finale for Season 2.
I mean, it was a banger. It was great. I loved it. I mean, I think that at this point, if you've been listening to our reviews every week, it's probably sounding like a broken record because we've really enjoyed every episode this season. But I think what they did, I mean, honestly, guys, to go from a Lower Decks animated crossover into a musical episode, into a let's just go full Ridley Scott, James Cameron aliens with the Gorn. I mean, they're really just stretching the limits. It really does remind me when I first moved out to LA and I was taking a storyboarding class at the Animation Union, I got in a big argument with my professor because he said that sci-fi was not a genre all by itself. He's like, sci-fi is not a genre. And I'm like, I am a nerd and I love sci-fi and sci-fi is absolutely a genre. And he was like, no, he's like, sci-fi is not a genre. Sci-fi is a location. And in that location, you can do whatever. You can do noir sci-fi like Blade Runner. Wow. You can do action sci-fi like Aliens. Mm-hmm. You can do horror sci-fi like Alien. And at the time, I didn't fully agree with him, and I still don't fully agree with that. But I think it really rings true for this season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I think what they have done with this season particularly is say, hey, we are Star Trek.
Yeah.
Every episode that we do is going to feel Star Trek. We are the Federation. We have some classic characters, but within that, we're going to do every single thing under the sun that we can think of. We're going to do out-and-out comedy. We're going to do a musical. We're going to do an animated crossover. We're going to do some callbacks to classic stuff. We're going to do really thoughtful legal dramas. We're going to do all-out action in this finale, and they pulled it off. And throughout all of it, they've stayed true to what they wanted to do with these characters. They've put the characters and their relationships and their kind of emotional journeys at the forefront. So it never felt like a gag, like with the musical episode or the Lower Decks episode. Right. I think we talked about them. Like, it wasn't just a, hey, look what they did, this is so funny, but it doesn't really matter to the rest of the season. Like La'an and Kirk, Pike and Batel, Chapel and Spock, Ortegas wanting to go on an away mission, Uhura figuring out who she is and where she fits on the Enterprise. Like, all of these things have carried through the season. We've learned more about characters like M'Benga, and then it all kind of came together in the first part of this epic story. And look, they made the Gorn scary.
Yes, they did.
Like, the Gorn, up till this point, when you say the Gorn, you think of a young William Shatner fighting a dude in a very bad lizard costume.
Yeah, exactly.
And to take the Gorn and kind of like, throw a xenomorph and a lizard suit into a blender, blend it up, pour it out, and give you what you got, like, it was thrilling and scary and creepy and just a banger episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, and I like they don't shy away from the xenomorph illusions. They're not like going like, no, this is original. How could you compare them? No, they lean into it, make connections to it as a tongue-in-cheek respect for the Alien franchise and for the creation of those xenomorphs since the first Alien movie.
I mean, look, when Batel is face to face with that Gorn and then it backs away for no reason and leaves. It's Alien 3. Yeah, it's literally the most famous shot from Alien 3. Like, there's when Pike was like, "What's wrong?" and she was like, "Nothing," and I was like, "She got babies in her. She got babies." So yeah, I mean, like the Ridley Scott. I mean, all three though. I mean, kind of the horror elements of the Gorn, like Chapel, kind of walking through the ruins of the saucer. Very much Ridley Scott, but Pike and Ortegas and Mbenga. And Sam kind of walking through the city with the guns, hunting down the Gorn, very much James Cameron Aliens. Yeah. And then, yes, the Batel moment with the Gorn, very much Alien 3. So definitely the Alien references were big throughout. But to your point, also, like, we got Scotty.
Yeah.
Scotty is on board. So, like, that's really great. So just a lot of really, really interesting stuff going on. And, I mean, I honestly feel like we might be living in like a golden age of Star Trek right now.
It is absolutely. I mean, Star Trek Discovery walked and stumbled and occasionally ran so that Picard season 3 and Strange New World seasons 1 and 2 can run like crazy. I mean, it just
and Lower Decks.
Oh, and Lower Decks. Yes, of course.
And I keep telling y'all, I mean, who knows where season 2 is going to show up, but don't sleep on Prodigy either. It is. It's not just a kid show. It is good. And if you love Janeway, you're gonna love you some Prodigy. So like, we really like. And that doesn't even get into the upcoming Starfleet Academy or the
short treks, which have been great. People have loved the short treks as well. Yeah.
So like we've been doing great, and I've been telling other people what we've said on our reviews in the past few weeks, and particularly with Scotty showing up, that like I honestly would be down for 2 or 3 more seasons with this crew and then slowly transitioning over and give me the OG team with this cast and start telling stories, and I'd be in. Like, I think it's that strong.
Yeah. You know, I said this a few weeks ago. It feels like that's where they're heading towards since maybe the beginning, by teasing the fact that we know what the end point of Pike is going to be, which we saw in the Menagerie, the original series 2-parter. That is my favorite episode of Star Trek, episodes of Star Trek. We know where Pike ends up. So slowly introducing members of the crew that are going to take over the Enterprise in interesting ways seems like that's where we're going. And I think they had to slowly get us used to these characters. They had to hope that the rollouts worked and that a majority of the fans enjoyed it. And it seems like they have been. And certainly I enjoyed the Scotty rollout in this episode. Yeah, I really liked this episode. Thoroughly enjoyed where we went with it in terms of the relationships. Really enjoyed the fear that the Gorn, the horror elements of it, as you alluded to here, but also the idea here of old Star Trek, right? Of the original series Star Trek. They want to create a Midwestern town in the middle of space, that kind of thing that you would see in like the original series that they do, because the production value wasn't that high in a lot of these episodes because they didn't have a lot of money to create these episodes. So something doing simple like that works overall, as well as alluding to it, but also so much more in these relationships that we got in this episode as well that I thought was really great. We're seeing, and they didn't mention Una also on her journey here.
Yeah.
I mean, Pike saying, I need you here on the ship, essentially saying, you are a captain in waiting. You are a captain in training, kind of like what we saw in Picard season 3 with Jerry Ryan. You're a captain in training. And so I'm going to need to go down, and I might be risking my life, but I know the Enterprise is in good hands. You got to stay here. I know you want to come, but you got to stay here. So you see that in how that's developing as well in her journey. And so everyone has been having their moments for sure, and it's been fun to see. So let's get into it. First of all, Hegemony? Yeah, hegemony is
hegemony.
God damn it. Hegemony is the political, economic, and military predominance of one state over other states. Certainly we see the Gorn being called that there by Admiral April in the episode. Yes.
And I think in like the expanded universe of Star Trek stuff, the Gorn have always been called, like, the Gorn hegemony is what they've been called in the history of Star Trek.
For me, I'm going to put an extra H in there. I think that's going to help me say it correctly. Hegemony. All right, here we go. It's directed by Marja Virvillo. Hope I got that right. Who directed episodes of Picard, Discovery, and Short Treks. And it's written by showrunner Henry Alonso Myers and Akiva Goldsman. Henry Alonso Myers has 6 writing credits, but this is his first solo credit here. And he also, Maja Vervillo also helmed season 1's Children of the Comet. And we've seen the Gorn teased, Mike, since the first episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And then this episode in this season, The Broken Circle, which was the premiere, mentioned that this is going to happen eventually between them. So we see that. So we're going to break this thing down here, old school style, as we used to do in the Geek Buddies. I'm going to go I've just split the episode up into 3 sections, and we're going to discuss the actions in the sections. All right. I didn't want to do storylines this time around. I wanted to focus on action. So let's get it going.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
The episode opens just outside Federation space here on Parnassus Beta or Parnassus Beta. Captain Batel is doing the ship's log voiceover here. As the beginning, she talks to us and tells us Parnassus Beta is a colony modeled after a 20th century Midwestern town, as I just mentioned. We see that Nurse Chapel is giving vaccinations here. We get a Dr. Corby reference, and then Chapel beams up to the Cayuga, which is Captain Batel's ship. Pike calls Batel to check up on her, but their call is cut short as a massive Gorn ship appears out of the clouds like something out of Independence Day or District 9. Parnassus is able to get a distress call out from Captain Batel, which the Enterprise receives, and they go, and Pike, he goes immediately into rescue mode. While they're going into rescue mode, Pike talks to Admiral April, who warns Pike about not letting his feelings get in the way of things because it could spark a war with the Gorn. They also have an exchange about calling some people we don't understand monsters. I'm going to get to my overall analysis of that, but I think that's really interesting. When they get there, they see that the Gorn have already struck here and blocked out communication. The Cayuga is destroyed, but they can't find any life signs. So where is Nurse Chapel? And then more Gorn show up with a message showing a demarcation line here, Mike. It's basically saying you guys need to stay on your side of the line or there's going to be trouble. Pike calls a meeting of all his senior people there on the ship, says he's going to go violate this line and go and get these people out of there, including his love there, Captain Batel. Spock, Una, and Uhura want to help, but he wants them to stay on the ship. But Sam, La'an, Mabenga, and eventually Ortegas volunteer to be part of this crew to go down there. And Pike reveals that he's got anti-Gorn weapons in Crate 32, which he has transported into there for them to take a look at. They can track the Gorn, they can stun the Gorn, they can kill the Gorn with these weapons now, based on their experiences with the Gorn from last season. So, Mike, hell of an opening, hell of an intro, certainly laying the stakes and what the intentions and the drive of these characters are going into what we're going to get into the meat of the episode. So what do you think of this beginning? What do you think of laying the groundwork, all this, the exchanges between everybody and this crate of anti-Gorn weapons?
I mean, this is just really great pacing. I mean, they dive right into everything. They give you this really nice opening with Batel. You see Chapel leave, you get everything going. And then, that ship shows up. And, every week when we review the Marvel shows and when we review the Star Wars shows and we're like, why was it only 29 minutes? And did they do this? And were the effects good? You're like, well, the budget is whatever. But then you look at like something like that ship coming in on Strange New Worlds and you're like, well, fuck, guys, you gotta catch up. I don't know what to tell you because that looks great. Yeah. It looks great. Yeah, and even seeing like that Starfleet ship crash, which comes into play later, you're like, all right. So like you jump right into it, get to the Enterprise, see what's going on. Like they're like, all right, all hands on deck. Let's see what's going on. And to your point, I really did love the exchange about monsters. Yeah. Where Admiral April's like, look, monster is just a word that we use and we don't understand something, and just see Pike just like not about it.
Yep.
He's like, well,
I don't have time for that kind of discussion right now.
He's like, they're fucking monsters. Like, they are giant lizard people. I'm done. I'm out. And then, you get the typical, it is so typical, but you like it every time. Hey, I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to do this. I can't ask you to go with me. We're all in. You're like, yeah, all right, I'm in. Let's do this. Let's do this thing. And then, beaming the weapons in. This is the first of many times that, like, I started to be like, oh, yeah, we're going full Aliens. Because, like, one of the big things between Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien, and Aliens is Alien, that thing was impenetrable. Like, none of the weapons they had on that ship could hurt that thing
because it wasn't a military ship. It was
so like they had no ability. Like that thing was, you didn't know where it was coming from. Right. You couldn't hurt it. It was just this an unstoppable monster. And when we saw the Gorn in season 1, it played fully like that. Like that, it was full alien.
Yeah.
And here you set things up right off the bat with, oh no, we're James Cameroning here. We can track him, we can shoot him, we can kill him. Like we're going in and we're not fucking around.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, here we go. Let's do this thing. And you know, I think we called it last week. Another thing that I'm very happy that they didn't do.
Yeah.
You know, you had said last week, I don't know that Batel makes it out through this episode.
Right.
And look, the word frigid gets thrown around all the time, and I was just waiting for it to get thrown around if this happened, that had Batel just been dead.
Right.
Had
right.
like Batel, like we had
stopped.
been, if we had this relationship all season, and then Batel just was gone and that was it, she was off the show, it wouldn't have exactly been the worst thing in the world, but I think it would have been a waste of a nice character.
100%.
So I was very happy to see that is not what they did. And I think what they did with her is very, very interesting. Now, she still might not make it out of the beginning of season 3. Like, we'll see. So there's still a question, but I think the way they handled it was really good. And it makes, no matter what happens to her, she is still very, she's a captain who's making her own decisions.
Yes. Right.
And not robbed of her own autonomy. And so I think that they did a really nice job with her. Like I've quite come to like Marie Batel. Like I think she's a fun character. Like I get that we don't dive into a ton with her, and like her and Pike's relationship we haven't like delved into in the same way that we have with like Chapel and Spock, but I think that she's a really great actress and she's brought a lot to the character, and I like her as Batel.
Yeah, I absolutely do as well. I like this intro, laying the groundwork for everything that's going on. We're slowly, figuring out that the Gorn are more than just lizard. We're throwing little seeds here that there's going to be a better understanding between the Gorn and the Federation, and it clearly sometimes when you're in the war, it's hard to see the bigger picture of the war. And of course, those people up there, you can hate the people up there or you can like what they're doing. It all depends on your point of view and perspective, but they have bigger things to worry about. Whereas on the ground, Pike can have the luxury to be like, I want to kill these guys. They're just reptiles, whatever. But this is just like the Klingon, right? The Klingons, rather, in the original series. Initially, kill the Klingons. They're always evil, no matter what. But eventually, as things progress, there was a respect and appreciation for the Klingons. And I wonder if that will happen for the Gorn as things progress. Because remember, Kirk doesn't kill that Gorn in the original series. And this is a younger Kirk we're seeing here. Kirk may learn the lessons from Pike's experiences with the Gorn. Things may change. So that's the reason Kirk doesn't kill the Gorn, even though it does attack him on that planet in that episode in the original series. So I think that's an interesting element of this. It's like bubbling like 7 layers below in the writing of this episode.
And like we said, like each episode has kind of been its own thing this season, and I think a really successful way. But when you look at some of the bigger elements throughout the season, the Federation's really harsh laws against anybody with genetic modification,
right?
And they're kind of it's not speciesism, but their ism about people with genetic modifications. Everything with the Klingons, with Mbenga and the Klingons, with Ortegas and the Klingons, with anyone who fought in the Klingon War and their feeling about Klingons. And now this thing with the Gorn, where they are completely alien. Like they are so different from us, but
intelligent.
Unlike aliens, they are smart. Like they have technology. They have their own ships. They have there's something going on with the Gorn. And so I think that for people that are like, oh, Star Trek Strange New Worlds is all over the place, just doing its weird stuff. Like, it is doing weird stuff, but some of the bigger themes throughout in the way that we deal with the othering of people, the way that we look at people from different species, from different races, from different cultures, like that, which Gene Roddenberry baked in day one from Star Trek, is still happening really, really well in Strange New Worlds while they're doing all this other crazy stuff.
I agree with you, Michael. And that's like 100% the way I kind of, when I looked back at it after doing all the, preparing for the review, I rewatched it again from a symbolism point of view. And certainly there is something to be said about an alien force entering a small town, killing a lot of people and impregnating certain people with their species, right? With their thoughts, with their abilities, using them as shells to push narratives, right? No matter what side of the political spectrum you are on, you can other the other side and think they're the ones going into small towns and warping people, killing their free thinking, killing their free speech, implanting their ideas in them to turn them into monsters so that we can call them monsters. So those are those things that you see that are symbolic in what's happening, but they're universal in that it depends on your political point of view. You can take it in any way, but in essence, it works on the surface, but it also works in a symbolism way when you look below it. And that's always, the social stuff is commentary has always been a part of Star Trek. It's always been quote unquote woke, and that's what people sometimes somehow are oblivious to. So
Star Trek went woke and broke on day one, but y'all, it just
I don't know about broke, but certainly woke.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it didn't last as many seasons as other shows.
Well, there were some lean years. You're not wrong, Mike. You're not wrong. All right. Let's get into the meat of this, and then we'll have a discussion and take a break. So I like to put one break in our reviews here. All right. Let's jump in from where I left off here. Ortegas comes up with this awesome plan to make the shuttle look like space garbage, and he is
You mean the Han Solo plan?
Yeah, sure, the Han Solo plan, fine. But it's great. But Pike, I love how Pike turns it around. Ortega says, "Hey, look, you wanted to be part of a landing party, didn't you?" And I love Ortegas's reaction. Yeah, why did I do that? And anyway, it's so funny. When they land, they see essentially, as Michael mentioned, a post-apocalyptic looking wasteland. To me, it reminded me of The Last of Us and a weird Gorn beacon tower that explains the communications blackout. We see some Gorn younglings show up, and Lon notices that they're not behaving like typical Gorn younglings. They're actually cooperating rather than fighting each other for dominance. And I said this eventually leads to a Vogel Rocha scene with Vogel as Pike and me as Lon. Pike like Vogel, ever the optimist. Me like Lon, ever the pessimist, with a hope that it might work out, but prepared that it probably won't. Pike suggests there's something about the Gorn we've yet to discover. Pike's optimism here, I think, is really interesting to analyze and look at, because he was calling them aliens and monsters, but look how he's slowly kind of analyzing the things that are changing in real time, which I think is really important here. Pike says there's always a choice, and Lon says, yeah, you've told me that one before, which might be a reference to the first episode of the series with Pike and Lon talking about things between them and what she experienced at the hands of the Gorn. And he says there's surviving and then there's living. It's your choice. So a very interesting thing to see there. But before they can figure out why, Sam picks up human readings and they track down the signal and are trapped in a force field that has been rigged by none other than Lieutenant Montgomery Scott here, played by Martin Quinn, who I remember from a small part in Dairy Girls. So if you guys haven't seen Dairy Girls, I cannot recommend it enough. He's actually Scottish, Martin Quinn. So nice to see him pop up in here. But he tells them he survived a previous Gorn attack, explains how he did it with jury rigging the shuttle and all of that, using the solar flares. And he also leads them to the survivors. Captain Batel is there amongst the survivors. And after a brief, joyful hug, she's actually mad that Pike came because now he is in danger too, which speaks to the volume of her feelings for Pike. Back on the ship, Spock is defying logic here as he continues to look for Chapel and other life signs on the Coega there. And he explains to Una that things did not end well between him and Chapel, and he wants to apologize. She says it's not his fault. There's no crying or hugging like Good Will Hunting, but certainly you get the message. And then Uhura enlists the help of Pelia with a crazy plan to find this Gorn communications tower. They present it to Una and Spock. They triangulated the source of the Gorn's interference, and they think they can throw some space junk at it, knock it out, and avoiding the sort of direct attack that would start the war. And they come up with a plan to put rockets on the Cayuga's saucer section and then gradually and believably drop it out of orbit and right into the tower. Spock volunteers to do it because he says no other human being can do it. Mike, heck of a middle part here. What do you think of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you're going through it, you kind of laid out why this is a banger episode.
Yeah,
because Ortegas gets to do some badass flying.
Yes, she does.
And also, okay, so just to be clear, as we're tracking references and homages, intentional or otherwise, the let's pretend we're space garbage is almost verbatim what Han, Chewie, and Leia do in Empire Strikes Back to get away from the Empire.
Point.
Like, they are space garbage. So Ortegas, she's watched Empire a few times. But then when they get to the planet and they drop, and the whole, like, I need to drop to this many feet before I punch the engines, it's fully like the Marines landing in Aliens. Yes. Like, it's that drop. Like, and it also just makes Ortegas awesome. Yeah. Like, all of them kind of having their hard time, like Pike looking like he's fully going to blow chunks, and Ortegas just grinning the whole time, really coming up at the end, and Pike just being like, man, you were born for this. Like, it's a great Ortegas moment. It's like, okay, you're my girl. You can fly in and out of anything. I'm on board. So Ortegas, great moment. Yeah. And then you have this awesome exchange between La'an and Pike once they are on the planet. And exactly what you said. It's the eternal Rocha Vogel argument, but it is, and you get La'an's feelings about the Gorn, and you get Pike just being we're gonna find a way. I mean, to La'an, to Batel, like Batel's like, we can't, your shuttle's not gonna get everybody out of here. He's like, we're gonna get some people out of here, and then we're gonna figure out a way. Like, Pike is fully like, we are going to make this work and save everybody. Which is very important for when we get to the end of this episode. Yeah. So Pike has a great moment. La'an has a great moment. Then you get this Scotty moment. Now, when you introduce a classic Trek character, it can go wrong a lot of ways. Like, it can be like, that was cheesy. That was silly. I don't like how you did it. That doesn't feel right. But to have them all get trapped in this really brilliant plan, and the dude shows up and he opens his mouth and starts talking, and you're like, it's Scotty. Like, it's gotta be Scotty. Like, listen, this accent is Scotty. Like, is it not Scotty? Like, it's gotta be Scotty. And he's like, oh yeah, Lieutenant Montgomery Scott. And you're like, it's Scotty. And like, it just, I think everybody was thrilled, and it was a total blindside. Like, I hadn't read about it. I didn't know that Scotty was gonna be in this episode, and so it was a really satisfying, fun, nerdy Star Trek moment. And then back on the ship, Una gets this really great, she's talked this whole season or sung about opening herself up and being really more there for her crew emotionally. And so then you get this moment in the finale where she's really there for Spock emotionally. And you see Spock doing his Vulcan best to keep his emotions in check, but freaking out about Chapel. And then
but I also think it speaks volumes, Michael, that he's even able to open up and share that with Una. That shows you that his embracing the human side
his Vulcan / human way, like as much as he's trying to keep it in, he still is like, the last thing I said to her was not good. Like, I need her to be okay. And it was like, it was a really touching moment. And then Uhura gets to come up with Pelia with the awesome plan, which also kind of brings their relationship to the forefront, as she's been sort of avoiding her throughout the season because she was really close to Hemmer. And now the two of them come up with this awesome plan, and it's an awesome plan. So now you've got Pike and the team on the ground with Batel, and we've got to figure out what we're going to do to get everybody out. You've got Uhura and the team coming up with this awesome plan, and you've got Spock being like, okay, well, y'all humans are not as precise as me, so I'm going to fly over here into darkness style, and I am going to place all these rockets on this giant saucer and crash the fucking saucer into the thing. And so as far as like this is what the plan is, like, it is very clear, it is very straightforward, and it's very awesome to watch.
Yeah, I agree. There was so much genius in this middle section of the show, from Scotty explaining how he was able to escape the Gorn and everything that he did to kind of escape the Gorn. And by the way, very reminiscent of Simon Pegg's interpretation, obviously with shades to James Doohan's interpretation there. But once again, seems like he's going to be a part of the Star Trek Enterprise by accident, like the 2009 Star Trek situation happens with Simon Pegg. And I like that. I think Martin Quinn did a wonderful job,
great job,
completely evoking. And you could easily be like, no, but it worked so well, because we are slowly fitting in all the pieces of the Enterprise here in terms of the crew. Depending on what happens to Scotty in season 3, I imagine he's going to get on that ship and take Pelia's spot eventually. But you're setting it all up here in the way that it's working. And I think it's so fun to see. But again, we get the Batel and Pike stuff. I love that. I love that back and forth. I love her saying to him, you're an idiot for coming here. Now you're in danger. One of us has to survive. One of us are captains, and one of us. The only negative, I think, a little bit is we don't get to see her mourn her crew members who have died. And it's a shame, because we haven't had separate episodes with Captain Batel and her crew and all of that. So you kind of have to give the show that a little bit of understanding in that situation. But you would like to hopefully maybe down the road have some short treks once, of course, the strike is resolved and all of that, that we get a little more time to understand.
The Cayuga.
What's that? The Cayuga. Yeah. Batel's ship in the Cayuga. Yeah. All of that. Just a little more time, I think, would be nice. But yeah, all of that works so well. And again, we get this idea of intelligence, right? How do we figure this out? Okay, Uhura, as you said, so well, working with Pelia. Pelia said, I love a crazy theory, and don't censor yourself. Give it all to me. And they do figure out what they need to do. And of course, as we've seen numerous times in Star Trek, the smashing of the saucer ship, as we saw in Generations and other places, into something to either save people or destroy something. We've seen that happen many times.
We love a saucer smash. We love to see it. But we did. I mean, and we talked about this a lot in Picard season 3 finale as well. When you have this full cast of characters, and you have these big stories and you want to do all this action and you want to hit these emotional beats and you want to have a cool moment. You want to do this, like orchestrating a story that allows you to let all of your characters shine in moments is very hard to do with a cast of this size. And I think they did a lovely job of even like, I mean, we're not quite there. We'll get ahead. I'm getting slightly ahead of myself, but even like the nice exchange between Mbenga and Ortegas when they think that Chapel's dead. I mean, like every character got a really nice moment in this episode. So that is, it's a real challenge. And the fact that they did it and they did it so well is just really a testament to how well they know these characters and what they want to do and what they're trying to accomplish.
And the amount of time that will be enough for us as viewers to enjoy and not have it feel like it's dragging on too much or we need to move on to the next thing. Perfect amount of time every single time into these windows we have with them.
It's the ultimate example of what you bring up a lot, which is, you know, oftentimes when we're watching a show, usually a Marvel show, where you say that you want, you know, more about this character or more about this character. You want to know more about this and you just feel like you didn't get enough time with this. Now, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I mean, sure, the episodes are like more full hours, whereas like Secret Invasion and some of the other things aren't, but it's not that much longer.
Right. No,
but
you're right.
They are very smartly using like the scene with Ortegas and Mbenga is not a long scene. But it gives us just enough of these characters that like we're checking in with everybody. And it really shows how it's not sometimes that you need to spend a ton of time with every character. It's just being really smart about the time that you do spend. And this is an episode that really eloquently shows this is how it works when you spend the right amount of time with each of these characters.
And you have a lead actor and lead character who is willing to be in the background of their stories for large chunks of sections of episodes, which I think works so well because it only establishes and reaffirms and solidifies our love for Anson Mount and our love for his version of Captain Pike. I mean, he was fantastic through this entire episode. Doesn't lose his cool, keeps it calm, but then at the end, which is why at the end when he's hesitating, which we'll get to, it's all the more chilling that he's hesitating and unsettling that he's hesitating because he's been so good and determined in being the optimist in the situation. I love that. Essentially, it's a Kobayashi Maru at the end. So
it is very much a Kobayashi Maru.
Right. All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll jump into the last section of the show here right after this.
Kobayashi Maru, Kobayashi Maru, Kobayashi Maru. That literally sounds like songs I used to sing in Hebrew school. It literally, it sounds like Hebrew when you just start singing it like that. But
all right. I like that. I've never had that experience, but I like that. All right, let's move on here. Back on Parnassus Beta, Scotty tells Pike about a plan to slip the survivors and Pike's crew out by mimicking the Gorn signals, but they need pieces from Scotty's shuttle to do it. Later on that night, we see, as you mentioned, Michael Mbenga and Ortegas having a really sweet interaction about Christine, about Nurse Chapel. Can tell the genuine love they both have for her as a friend and as a person of the crew, which I thought was a really nice moment here. Batel catches Pike trying to sneak out because, of course, he is to get just that piece of the ship from Scotty's shuttle, and says she's going with him. And Scotty, who apparently was listening in, volunteers as well. And we see on the Cayuga that Chapel has somehow survived because, of course, she has people. She's not going to be dead like that. She gets the power back on the ship, but finds out that we run out of oxygen in like an hour. Running out of oxygen in an hour. Spock, we see heads down, starts attaching rockets, and Chapel sees him, tries to get his attention, doesn't get his attention. And Spock's spacewalk invokes, as I mentioned, or as Michael mentioned here earlier, we saw in Into Darkness, but it also invokes the motion picture, Star Trek, which he did. And I saw a reference here, and shout out to Den of Geek, that they referenced the animated series episode Jihad, and we'll see how that comes into play a little bit later. Chapel puts on the space suit. She's about to go meet Spock when she runs into an adult Gorn, and I put this terrifying, utterly terrifying. It's the first time we've seen an adult Gorn in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and it is fucking chilling. That Gorn later on confronts Spock just as Chapel has made it out there to see Spock, and they both work together to kill that Gorn and send the Cayuga down to destroy the tower as they hold hands in space, Mike. Then Pike, Batel, and Scotty make it to the shuttle, but a Gorn youngling attacks them, screams at Batel, as Michael mentioned, this Alien 3 moment, but doesn't attack. Pike is puzzled as to why, and Batel reveals that she's been implanted with Gorn eggs, just like Hemmer from season 1. She volunteers to sacrifice herself, just like Hemmer did in season 1 to save the others. But Pike is like, no way. And then the space junk or the saucer destroys the tower, which is very reminiscent of Generations and also happened in Star Trek Beyond. So the transporting begins here. Spock and Chapel first get up there first, and there's a moment between them. Pike next with Batel, but the imagery is weird as we see the rest of the townsfolk and the rest of the Enterprise crew get transported. It looks different than before, but Batel and Pike are up there. After he hugs Nurse Chapel because she's alive, he asks Christine to take care of Batel and shows her the implanting. Batel tells Christine to kill her the second she knows she can't save her. Scotty and Pelia have a very funny reunion scene because, of course, he's one of her former students, and she is the first one chronologically to call him Scotty in this timeline. Not in canon, obviously, because we've seen him be called Scotty for decades, but chronologically, first one to see Scott to call him Scotty. Then the Enterprise realizes they can't locate the rest of the landing crew and the survivors to beam them up because they've already been beamed up by the Gorn, who've begun attacking the Enterprise. Starfleet orders the Enterprise to leave the area, which would require Pike to abandon his people there. And for once, Pike is standing on the bridge of the ship and doesn't know what to do. And I paused it just before we got that black frame. And I was like, wait, there's only 3 minutes left. And then to be continued popped up on the screen. Michael, the dreaded to be continued popped up on the screen. So your thoughts here as we go. Oops, sorry about that. Your thoughts as we go through Scotty's plan and everything needs to happen there. And then when we go through and beam aboard the ship, finding out about Batel and then ending on a to be continued, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, first, it's probably going to come back later to be important that Scotty's plan and a lot of what he knows about the Gorn revolves around the fact that they are acting weird and there's these giant solar flares happening, and that the Gorn are somehow like locusts, swarm for different reasons. So I think that you're starting to lay the groundwork for when we get to the beginning of season 3, like, hey, these are monsters. They're horrible. They are these evil creatures. Oh, why are they doing this? This is what's really going on. So, you're laying the groundwork for the pieces that we're going to need for what really is going on with the Gorn. But yeah, perfectly good plan. Scotty masked his ship to look like a Gorn ship. He could do the same thing. Let's go get the thing, put it in the shuttle, get some people out of here. All right, great. Let's go. Chapel on the remains of that saucer was cool.
Yeah.
Like, Chapel running around a ruined starship was just a good vibe. Like, really well shot, really creepy. Her seeing Spock right away trying to get to him. And then, this Gorn seeing something that's basically an alien xenomorph, but also in a spacesuit is very upsetting.
And also trying to put in a code.
So that is the other thing. So you've got this adult Gorn, clearly intelligent. Like, it's scary. Like, it is Ridley Scott alien scary. Like, it is like, that is a very creepy moment. The tail sort of dropping the way that it does when she thinks it's Spock and that tail drops. And you're like, it was creeping me out in all the right ways. Also, what was that Gorn trying to do?
Yeah.
I feel like that is something else that we're going to sort of run back around to. Like, so this Gorn is on the remains of the Federation ship trying to get into something.
Yes.
Like, what is going on with the Gorn? They are clearly not just like, let's go kill people and lay eggs. Like, it's not aliens. Like, aliens is scary because they are mindless drones that their only job is to just like reproduce and spread as much as possible.
That's what we thought. Yeah,
in the alien movies. And then with Gorn, there's something more going on. So really, really interesting stuff. The Spock Chapel Gorn fight was just zero G fight. Cool.
That was awesome.
Just cool. Like, I'm well aware of the fact that Spock and Chapel are surviving this fight. I've seen the original series. I know they're not going down. But when that Gorn wrapped his tail around Spock's throat, I was very much in the moment. Like, I was feeling it. Chapel shooting that thing, and then Spock, like, just slamming his mask to, like, break it so that, like, the cold vacuum of space took that thing out. Great sequence. And then the two of them floating up as the saucer sort of collapsed. Like, haven't seen anything that romantic in space since Wally and Eva did their space dance. Like, I was into it. So that was all great. Great crash. Scotty being like, hold on to something. Like I said, I already touched on the Batel moment, which was just straight out of Alien 3. Like, you were like, she has babies in her. This is what's going on. Giant crash, huge explosion. Boom, let's beam everybody up. Now, I did not notice when I first watched it that the beaming of everybody after Pike and Batel go up, after Chapel and Spock make it onto the Enterprise, that everyone else beaming up is not exactly the same effect as the Enterprise beaming. It's green and kind of wibbly, and it is not the same. So I was like, when Spock was like, there's no humans on the planet, I was not ahead of it. Like, I was like, wait, what? And then I was like,
neither was I.
Shit. And yeah, I think Kobayashi Maru is the exact right way to put this. Like Pike, who, and this is why it's important, like for the entire episode, like, I'm going to go get Batel. I'm holding on to hope. They're on that planet. I'm going to go find them. Hey, I'm going to get you out of here. We're going to get some people out on a shuttle. We're going to figure this out. We've got this plan. Like, this whole episode is like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And he ends up in a situation where a significant number of people, period, and a significant number of people that he cares about are on a Gorn ship.
Yeah.
As far as we know, getting ready to be impregnated.
Yeah.
And the Gorn are attacking, and he literally does not know what to do. Like, he has to make a choice, and there's no option. There's no way out. There's no, let's do this brilliant thing, set phasers to stun, there's nothing. He's got nothing. And to leave him on that note, and to leave us to all like think about for a good year, what is Pike going to do? Yeah. It's a hell of a way to end a season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I texted you as I was, when I was like, what? I was so frustrated, but then also appreciated it, because I mean, that's the confidence you need to have when you know you've written a good season of Star Trek, right? Even at the beginning with Menagerie, the way they did it was to go back and repurpose the pilot for this telling of this story, but they were confident enough with what they had already constructed to turn it into a two-part series. Really smart, a two-part situation, a two-part episode. And in Best of Both Worlds, same thing. Like, they were confident that they'd established enough of a rhythm and they'd hit their prime as a series here in Star Trek Next Generation to do a to be continued with the captain, with Riker having to shoot on the Borg-controlled Picard ship there. So you saw and then now we have Pike in a way mirroring that as well in that situation, because Pike also knows that something is going to lead to him ending up in that wheelchair box, beeping yes or no to questions. Is this the decision that's going to lead him to that? And I think that's the first time we've really seen him petrified, not in a negative way, just petrified, wondering what to do, because each decision will lead to some really big consequences. Because if he does go back there and the Gorn see him, he's essentially starting the Federation war with the Gorn by doing this. If he doesn't, he's leaving people to die. And as we saw in the earlier part of the episode, La'an pontificated that the Gorn were doing this because there's nothing left to eat, that they're hungry and they're doing these things because they have no other food. So what does that mean? Will they be killing even more people to eat them and what have you? So, and then what does it mean that they transported them onto the ship? Are they all impregnated with Gorn? Are they all going to be busting this out? Are there enough stasis fields to keep them in control? I don't know. So there's so much that this show ends on that they confidently know you'll be back for season 3 to see how this ends up. And I think that's incredible of the show and the writers and the creators.
And I think the other thing they've done, I think they've done a really nice job of fleshing out what it feels like the Federation Klingon War this season. That, like the Federation and Klingon, like that whole relationship that kind of like goes throughout all of the Star Trek movies leading up to Undiscovered Country. And the Borg are awesome. I love the Borg, but a lot of people kind of, by the time we got to the end of Star Trek Picard season 3, it's like, okay, enough. We've done the Borg. Like, we've done the Borg 1,000 times. The Borg are the Borg are the Borg. Great. Like, Resistance is futile. Like, Voyager did it. First Contact did it. We've gone to that Borg well a lot. And I think Terry Matalas kind of told the final Borg story. I mean, he really kind of did. Yeah. But so the Borg, were great. The Klingons are great. Romulans, great. Cardassians, cool. But they've taken the shitty lizard costumes from the original series and really developed sort of this xenomorph race within the Star Trek universe that's really compelling and really creepy and really scary, and a kind of threat that we've not seen before. Even though we have seen the Gorn in the original series, we've not seen them like this. So I think, I think Enterprise, they faced the Gorn, real weird CG looking Gorn, early CG looking Gorn, but like the way they sort of developed them out in this, like it's a really compelling new piece of the Star Trek universe world that I think they've really done a nice job developing and building out.
And I think what you bring up earlier, Mike, is excellent to consider as well. What did that Gorn want on the Cayuga ship? What are they trying to get? What files? Why are the Gorn acting the way they're acting? As La'an points out earlier in the episode, what is the desperation here that's going on with the Gorn? Why are all these ships amassing on the line there, the demarcation line? What is the situation? So we're left with a lot of questions. And a desperate Gorn is probably a more dangerous Gorn. And maybe the Federation knows somewhat what's going on. They haven't given the Enterprise the full intel. And the Enterprise sends back that intel about the solar flares and imitating the signals that Scotty figured out. So they've got that intel. But does the Federation know more than they're telling Pike about what's going on with the Gorn? Certainly we've seen, Mike, in the most recent Star Trek series here that have come out since they've all started coming out on Paramount Plus, questioning the Federation and the Federation's intentions and the Federation's knowledge is still a part of Star Trek, just like it was in the original series. Occasionally when Kirk would have issues with the Federation, or there were court-martials or trials with the Federation, and as we saw in the original series movies, where the Federation, even in Star Trek 6, members of the Federation are part of a plot to stop this Klingon and Federation union. So we see that the Federation has some actors within them that aren't necessarily fully buying into the mission of the Federation, or they are, but in a very warped way. So I like that that's still an element of this going on.
It is, I recently rewatched Undiscovered Country, and I had forgotten that part of it. That like, so even in Undiscovered Country, like that's where we started to see this. Like the Federation doesn't always have to be like perfect. Like it's the, even though that was Gene Roddenberry's original vision, that we're going to have this kind of utopian future that we can all aspire to, that sometimes our sci-fi is better when it's a little bit of a reflection back on the world we live in. And so like with Undiscovered Country going, there are humans and Klingons and Romulans that are all like, no, let's keep this war going. Let's keep everybody hating each other. It will be better for us. I don't want the Klingons in the Federation. And seeing, like we said, the discussion that Pike and Mbenga had a few weeks ago about Klingons, and then the discussion and that Pike has with the Admiral and that Pike has with La'an about the Gorn. Like I said, we're continuing to come back to this thing of the way that we look at others. And look, and it cuts both ways. Like it's easy for us on the left's progressive side of things to be like, this is how the right looks at people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ people, the trans community, whatever. But to be fair, it's also the way that people on the left and progressives look at people on the far right. Like we all other everybody. Like that's a part of human nature. 100%. And so to see Star Trek sort of throw that back to us and say, hey, let's even when something is a giant lizard monster that's impregnating babies in your body, like maybe there's more to the story.
Star Trek has always been about highlighting the injustices to make it possible for people to find a way to come together. The overall point of Star Trek is to come together. The Federation, in its mission, is about bringing people together. Do they always make the right choices? For example, Admiral April saying, well, Parnassus Beta is outside the Federation line, so we don't need to help them, or we don't need to give all. Even though the reason Captain Batel was there was to try to convince them to join the Federation, which she says at the beginning, they were given the vaccinations. And the people there at Parnassus Beta were worried about joining the Federation because it would put a target on their back. And those people who were probably part of that political spectrum down there on Parnassus Beta now are like, I told you, we mess with the Federation, this is what can happen to us. So I like that there's really interesting elements bubbling all around this thing that feel real world and connected. But at the end of the day, it is about understanding. Even Sam said that. Sam, a little bit of the Ash from Alien there, saying, well, I want to figure out what makes them work. I want to know what they're all about, and I'll use the phaser to stun them so I can analyze them or whatever. So, the elements are all there to try to understand rather than just other and destroy. And so I think that's always been the mission of Star Trek. And I like that even amongst the madness of this, there is still that desire to figure out find a way to connect and have peace in the situation. So we'll see what season 3 leads up to. Any final words on this particular episode, Michael, that we didn't hit on that you want to make sure we highlight?
No, just, I mean, like I said, this is a really just well done, well crafted, well acted, well visualized episode of Star Trek. Like it was thrilling and fun. It was as dramatic and exciting as action packed as the best of Discovery, while still having some of those, like that heart character and a little bit of humor that Strange New Worlds is so good at.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you 100%. I had a couple of nitpicking issues with the Batel stuff. I hope the Nurse Chapel and Spock stuff gets resolved. Remember, Christine says to him, when he tries to apologize, don't save that. We'll do that another time. What's that conversation going to be like down the road when they do it another? Because remember, Dr. Roger Corby, who was mentioned in this episode, Dr. Corby, rather, who was mentioned in this episode, he will, become fiance with Nurse Chapel, then break up with Nurse Chapel over the next 5 to 6 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how much Corby is going to be a part of next season.
And then make weird robot versions of people. Isn't that what he does?
Yes.
Doesn't he make weird robot versions of people?
No, I mean, isn't that a reason for breaking up the relationship? I feel like it is. If it gets a little.
Every time I meet a guy on Grindr, we go out on one date, find out he makes weird robot people. Like, it is a tale as old as time, guys. It's a tale as old as time.
Take over the world. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Michael, I do want to ask you, this is wrapping up because it's our final review of season 2. What are your overall thoughts for season 2, either compared to season 1 or overall as a standalone Star Trek season, a season of Star Trek, rather? What's your thoughts?
I think season 2 is better across the board than season 1. I think season 1 was super enjoyable. It was a lot of fun, but season 1 was like, let's do a bunch of really crazy, fun sci-fi situations with this cast of characters. Yeah. And they did. And it was different than what we had seen. Like, we really got to do those like weird, fun sci-fi episodes of the week, but it felt a little bit, and I really enjoyed it, but it felt sometimes like the situation was more interesting to the creative team than the characters. Like, Pike was great, Spock was great, but it kind of felt like Uhura, Ortegas, La'an, some of these other characters, like they were along for the ride. They were fun, but you didn't get to really dive in. You did a little bit. Like, it wasn't, not like it was like poorly done, but I feel like the story was the driver more than the characters were. And I think with season 2, they continued to just swing for the fences in doing some of the weirdest things that we've seen in Star Trek, but put all of the characters at the forefront. So I feel like we just got to spend a lot more time with every single member of the crew and really dive in and really get to know them more. So for me, and the type of storytelling that I respond to, season 2 worked even better than season 1 for me. And so I'm really anxiously awaiting more Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Michael. I think season 2 was better than season 1, even though season 1 was really great. I think Michael absolutely nails it. The idea was great. The execution wasn't always great in terms of connecting up the characters and furthering their storylines as effectively as they did in this season. Now, maybe this season is so good because of what they did in season 1, but if you're looking at it as a standalone series, this season 2, there was a confidence, there was a belief, there was a cockiness, there was a knowledge that they can pull this stuff off and really focus on the heart. Always check back in to the heart of the relationships, because that's really the strength of Star Trek. Yes, it's all aspirational, but it's the strength of the relationships, the connections you make with these characters and the journeys that they go on that is always the best Star Trek. And I thought this entire season did a really great job of fleshing out all these characters here on Enterprise and not on the Enterprise, on Farragut, on Cayuga, giving them also a little bit of time here for us to connect to them and feel a real desire to see more of them. So they effectively did that and did some wonderfully great episodes into new situations, darker situations, fun situations with Lower Decks and musicals. And then at the end, wrap it up by reminding you there's real serious stakes going on for this crew amidst all the jokes and the humors and the connection and the inside smirks and whatever. There's real stakes that they're responsible for. And I like that they made sure we remembered that as we go into season 3, whenever that may be down the road, Mike, for sure. All right, there you go. That's our spoiler review for the season 10 for season 2, episode 10 here on the Geek Buddies. Thank you so much for joining us and for joining us through the entire season. We appreciate it madly. Michael, what do we have to tell them?
Well, if you would like to follow us, you can do so on Twitter at geek_buddies, on Instagram at _geek_buddies. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, you can do so at the Rocha Says. If you would like to follow me, you can do so at MKToon. And after you do all that, we would also enjoy it if you would smash that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, leave your comments below. What did you think of this season finale? What did you think of this season overall? And what are you excited about for Strange New World Season 3? Let us know below in the comments. If you're listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some comments and stars there so that more people can find us and we go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing that you guys can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. And don't forget, our main episode dropped yesterday. It was a live episode where Mike and Shannon took care of most of the episode, talking about all the topics going on while I was suffering through some car trouble, but I jumped on at the end to have fun with them, talking some great Q&A questions from the fans and the listeners and the viewers of the Geek Buddy. So thank you all so much. And if you haven't watched the episode, it is up now and also on the podcast feed. All right, there you go. Thank you so much for joining us. For Michael Vogel, I am John Rocha here on the
Geek
Buddies.